Hello and welcome to the European Parliament here in Brussels. Today I've invited a delegation of Vapers from the UK to come over a week after the vote in Strasbourg. A vote which has unfortunately put a question mark over the future of vaping. Those of you who are not aware, there was a vote last week as a part of the TPD, the Tobacco Vote Directive, which in effect has reclassified or seeks to reclassify e-cigarettes. Now, there's some shenanigans with the vote because what we actually wanted was a split vote a few weeks before so we could actually go and lobby the MEPs and to discuss why, just as they did in October, they should reject the plan to regulate e-cigarettes. Unfortunately, due to the electoral shenanigans or the parliamentary shenanigans, there was an 11th hour decision at 10:49 to allow a split vote, which only gave us 41 minutes prior to the vote to lobby the rest of the MEPs, which obviously wasn't enough time, and it was passed. I have three guests with me. We have Nathan from Wales, and we have Liam and Sarah from London, I believe. Billericay, Essex. Well, welcome to the European Parliament, all with your Vapers.
Indeed, yes.
Nathan, tell me, how do you think this is going to impact?
I mean, myself, I've been using electronic cigarettes since late 2009, and the impact of what the current proposals are, well, not current proposals, but the impact of the legislation which has now been made is going to impact me to a degree where I may be forced to go back to tobacco cigarettes, which essentially is going to kill me, which is a decision that I don't want to make and I never want to have to make, which is why I've come over here to see how the system works, visit the European Parliament to find out my options of how we proceed.
Were you happy with how the European Parliament and how the European Union and the MEPs engaged in your thoughts prior to this vote?
There wasn't much. There was plenty of lobbying from us to get them to listen, but there was a very few selective MEPs that actually sat down and listened to us. I think we could put it on one hand.
73, out of one hand out of 73 UK MEPs.
Yeah, there's not many at all that would actually support us in electronic cigarettes.
Yeah. Would you like to discuss, what your thoughts of how, why, or just on your thoughts on why that the EU has decided to introduce e-cigs in the same bracket as tobacco?
It's really confusing to an e-cigarette user as to why anybody would want one of these devices to be classed as a tobacco product. We all know now, I think, that the harm caused from tobacco cigarettes comes from burning the tobacco and not the nicotine. These have been invented and designed precisely to make there to be a safe way to take nicotine. Every single ingredient, and there's only 4, has been chosen because it doesn't have toxicological effects. So there was a report out last week by a body called London Economics, who are a credible body that do this sort of thing, and they estimated that the impact of the restriction the EU is now imposing of 20 milligrams per millilitre will cause 105,000 deaths every year across the EU. And as an electronic cigarette user, I cannot understand it. I do not know why they have been included.
Just moving forward, can you understand why the EU have bracketed e-cigarettes along with tobacco?
In a word, no. As an electronic cigarette user, this is so far away from smoking a cigarette that they should not be in the same piece of legislation. These are, as far as we know, harmless. Tobacco smoking, as we know, is harmful. The point of the TPD is to reduce the harm from tobacco smoking.
Absolutely.
The point of these is to enable nicotine users to carry on using their cigarettes without doing themselves any of the harm. There was a paper out last week by a group called London Economics, quite a credible study, and they estimated that the effect of the restriction imposed by the EU, which is 20 milligrams per millilitre of the nicotine solution, will be 105,000 deaths across the EU every single year, directly as a consequence of this piece of EU legislation.
Well, it seems to me there was no impact assessment done.
There was no impact assessment done. And if there was, it wasn't a very good one at the least. I mean, in forms of an impact assessment, they should have consulted us. They should have consulted the people who use them. They should have actually came and spoke to us and said, listen, we have to include electronic cigarettes in the TPD for whatever reason. But they should have consulted us and said, what would you like? How would it affect you? How dependent are you on the product? Because currently at the moment there's 36 milligram nicotine in this. Effectively in 2 years' time this is going to be illegal. This entire device will be illegal and I'll be breaking the law. And the penalties for that is still unknown.
Yes. Sarah, you were a smoker.
I was.
How many did you smoke?
I was smoking 20 cigarettes a day on and off for about 35 years. I started when I was about probably 14, something like that, yeah.
And how long have you been vaping?
It'll be a year, beginning of April.
And did you try other methods to give up smoking?
I've tried virtually everything. I've tried patches and gums and inhalers. Nothing worked. I've also tried hypnotherapy. Well, you name it, I've tried it. I've given up cold turkey, I think, 4 times, but something always brings you back. Because it's as if there's something missing. And this is one of the things that we would have been able to put across had there have been more consultation with us during the process. We feel very left out by the process. We don't feel that people who have not been in our position can understand the products in the way that we do. For me, when I started on my first electronic cigarette, it was almost miraculous. It was a way that I could stop using lit tobacco straight away with no problem and still feel that I wasn't missing out on something, that there was something that I wanted to go back to. You know, I'm happy. I'm happy with what I've got. And now they're going to take it away. Well, they won't take it away from me, but what they will do is restrict access to it to all those people who are coming behind me, all those people who still haven't made that switch, haven't tried an e-cigarette. Those are the people who are going to miss out with this.
Because many vapers have told me they felt almost instantly the health benefits. They felt much more healthy.
The minute you pick an e-cigarette up, you can feel the instant benefits. Within the first 3 days of me using an e-cigarette, I felt a lot cleaner, I smelt a lot cleaner. And physically now, after as many years as I've been on it, I am physically fitter from using an e-cigarette. Now, I'm not making any medicinal claims. That's just me personally. I don't consider it to be a medical device. It's my choice. If I want to go and use an e-cigarette, the same as if it's my choice if I want to go and buy 200 fags and go and smoke them. It's the same choice if I want to go and buy a box of vodka. Give us the goddamn choice. It's a general product and it needs to remain a general product. And I think we all agree that you should have the freedom of choice to go and buy your Asda Smart Spice Beans instead of your Heinz. You should have the choice to buy an electronic cigarette instead of a tobacco cigarette.
So what now?
That's kind of the thing that makes it so confusing to us. In the absence of any evidence whatsoever of harm from e-cigarettes, why suddenly have these restrictions come about? Restrictions which we are all perfectly well aware will reduce the uptake of electronic cigarettes and quite significantly restrict the market of e-cigarettes, the people that make them and sell them, to large multinational companies who are the only ones who can afford to comply with the restrictions. When at present there are hundreds of small to medium businesses employing people, spreading wealth around various locations, and they've just been crippled.
On the top of that, Liam, I think it's a fair choice to say that Chris Coy done the programme, and on the basis, on the figures that the World Health Organization put out there, in the time that we've been speaking now, 2,000-3,000 smokers would have died from smoking-related illnesses. How many people has died from using an electronic cigarette? None. None in my entire time.
In fact, all the evidence points the other way.
Exactly.
So how are we going to Where are we going to move from here?
We ain't going to give up the fight. We're going to stay.
That's right.
We are leaving a mark, and we've left a mark here today. We will be listened to, and if we're not going to get listened to, we're goddamn good.
I don't know if you saw, but I pointed at one of the Labour MEPs that
Oh, yeah.
voted, and she wasn't happy, and she came up to me just before we did this, and she was incredibly angry that I pointed her out, that she voted
Well,
for
I'm
this.
glad you pointed her out, because I've got that face in my head now. I know who to target, not violently, but with various letters.
Yeah.
To,
I've heard from voters that we've had
well,
some.
at the end of the day, they're anti-against it. We're not going to change their mind. They can be dead against it as much as I care.
One of the things that we need to also do is in the UK, we need to make sure that our government and our civil service doesn't gold plate this.
Yes.
Right.
Doesn't-
It's all
doesn't-
in implementation.
doesn't-
At
all-
the end of the day,
doesn't-
the UK is such an arse, if you want. There's no other word to describe it. But when it comes to them implementing legislation, they will implement it to their maximum capacity.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Whereas the
it's
rest of the EU countries do it to the least.
Exactly. I think the UK need to do it at the bare minimum, so that if something does go wrong, there's progression there to put in further steps to
Absolutely.
avoid things, instead of going straight in at the deep end as the UK is always doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll never find out the potential of these products if we regulate them out of existence before they have a chance to prove themselves.
But when they come to gold plating, they're not going to be gold plating. I sincerely hope, and it's my belief, that they're not going to be gold plating the TPD as it stands here today.
Well, I'm with you. Let's carry on this fight, because I think this has been a ludicrous piece of legislation. Disgraceful way of it even came about. A disgraceful procedure on the day for those people that actually followed the vote, and the shenanigans in the hour previously. Certainly not
As an
democratic.
EU citizen, Nikki, I have to say it does present the EU in a very poor light, how this legislation was
Well,
made.
one of the things that obviously people know probably watching this, that I'm not in favour of the EU very much. I'm obviously very Eurosceptic, and people don't realise how the EU detrimentally impacts them until something happens to them. And the EU makes 75% of our laws emanate here, so it affects a lot of people, some laws. And we need more of a debate about it, about the EU.
I'm completely with you. I think that laws and legislation should be made back in Parliament in London, not over here.
Where we can dissect every small part, unlike here where they have to block vote. Well, thank you very much.
And the rushing.
Yes.
You know, the
TPD
rushing.
was
I've never
so-
seen anything rushed through quite so
And
quickly.
just lack of dialogue. We
Yeah.
didn't even have a debate before the vote
Yeah.
in Strasbourg last week.
Yeah.
It was a democratic sham, really. Well, time's been us, but thank you so much for joining me and coming to Brussels. I think as you say, we've left the mark today, and let's move forward from here.
Yeah.
Thank you very
And I
much.
think I speak
Thank
for
you,
all
Nikki.
Vapers when we say thank you for bringing us
Yeah.
Pleasure.
and inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.